by none other than Katie Rose Guest Pryal. And she is here to talk to us all about neurodiversity and how it impacts us as riders. And it is a really important topic, something that I am so stoked to learn more about. And Katie, thank you so much for joining us.
I am thrilled you asked me.
Yeah, and it's something that like I have so much to learn on this topic, and I think it's something that we are all becoming a lot more educated on in the last like 5 years.
Mhm.
But I know that there's so much more to learn, especially as it relates to our relationship with horses
Yeah.
and relationship with our friends in the equestrian community.
Mhm.
And I think I know I'm so excited to dive into some of those more specific questions. Before we do that, I would love to kind of set the stage and learn a bit more about you, Katie.
Sure.
Do you mind just telling us a bit about your story and where you're located?
Mhm.
And just we can kind of kick it off from there.
Sure. I live in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So that is, if you know where the Carolina Horse Park is or Tryon International Equestrian Center, I am uh, basically in between the two. There's good barns sort of away towards the mountains, but the sandhills of North Carolina is where it's at. That's where the Carolina Horse Park is. That's the ground is so lovely. You don't even need an arena. You just ride in the grass. I mean, it's so nice. I just want to buy a farm down there and move. But then I'd have to like hire help, and that's just too much work. So I have 3 horses, and we keep them at a barn. It's actually south and sort of that direction. And I have my horse, who's her name is Georgette. She has I'm going to not do the long names. Okay. We call her George. She's a mare, and she's a Dutch warm blood, but she's so skinny. Everybody's like, is she 5 years old? I'm like, no, she's 9, but this is just her build. And she's adorable, and I love her to pieces. And then, I have my son rides. He's 16 now. And, he has a little Hanoverian. She's like 15, 316 hands and can jump out of the arena. She's awesome. So he's, I mean, if he starts doing anything higher than like meter 10, we might have to get him a bigger horse, but she's just really great. And she's safe, and they're bonded, and it's great. And then I love training horses. And so I just bought like, I call them Venmo horses, where you like can pay for it on Venmo because they're so inexpensive. I just bought another Venmo horse, and he's a 2020 thoroughbred, never raced. He's a gelding, and so I have had mares now, like 3 mares in a row, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy, he doesn't know anything. He's such a doofus. But then I forgot how much geldings are so loving, and puppy dogs and all that stuff. So those are my 3. So the gelding is he's coming along. He's acting like he wants to be a hunter, which is like not what we do. And so I'm like, my dude, just get to that canter, compress. And he's like, no, big loping. I'm like, no, stop. So anyway, so I love, and I've always loved horses since I was a horse girl. I don't even remember not being a horse girl. My favorite books I still have from childhood, like these you'd go to the book fair. This is like, I don't even know if they still have book fairs. I think so. And anything with horses, I'm like buying all the horse books, and oh gosh. And I just loved them all. We talk about this, but I just could not stop with that. And I never had a horse when I was younger. That wasn't something that my family would have ever done. But I did ride at summer camp, and in the North Carolina mountains, that's a thing. It's like you got to do a lot of riding at summer camp in the mountains here, which is great. So I would ride for weeks, like 6 weeks in the summer, maybe, which is not nothing, right? If you're doing it every day. And then when I got to college, I joined the equestrian team, and that was great. And so that really tuned me up good. And so I felt great about that. Rode some off and on in my 20s, and then when I was in grad school. And then I took a break because I was just having babies and starting my career and all these things. And then one day, in my very early 40s, I was like, I am old enough and have enough income that I can just go buy a horse. I get to do that now. Like always this thing that I've always wanted, right? And so there are two things I've always wanted to do in my life. And one was be an author, a writer, and one was to ride horses. This is my dream. Like I spent my dream. So like those horse books, when I would finish reading them, I would then write my own, right? In a spiral, these spiral notebooks, right? Just on and on and on, all this, wish fulfillment fantasy stuff about horses, a horse that would take me away and all these things. And I'm like 9 and hate school and whatever. And so then, and so then I write books for a living and I get to ride horses. It's amazing. I am the luckiest person. And so it's pretty great. So I spent a large part of my 30s. I have a law degree and a PhD. And so I did go to school for a while. And then I worked as both a lawyer and a law professor. And then when one of my books started making kind of real money, I was able to leave full-time teaching. And so here I am. I'm an author. I'm a neurodiversity advocate. I'm an equestrian. We do jumpers and combined training, and it's just, we love it.
Amazing. It is so fun to meet people who are just absolutely living their dream. And
Yeah, it's great.
It feels like you're executing on that perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one second, my TV just decided to turn on. One moment.
Yeah. Well, I want to say that you can live your dream. This is the point. Like, do not give up. Okay. Like, don't stop ever.
Yeah, absolutely. I cannot agree more with that sentiment. It's a perfect place for us to start this conversation. And as we dive into the topic this evening, which is neurodiversity in equestrian sports,
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about like what neurodiversity is, what it means
Sure.
to you, and how did you end up as an expert in the field of neurodiversity?
Sure. Let's start with the last question. When I was in law, when I was a professor, one of my specialties was disability studies, and in particular, mental health. And around that time, this is a while back, neurodiversity wasn't a word that we used much. Okay. We used disability studies. That was something we said a lot. And then you would specialize within that. The term neurodiversity, though, is actually very old. It was popularized actually in 1998. Okay. So it's quite old. But it just didn't come to prominence. I don't think we all heard it, right? And you just said the last 5 years, right? And you're right. And so I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is social media, which is great. I think it's been wonderful for the neurodiversity movement. The second is what I just said, which is this idea that there is a neurodiversity movement, that people have realized that although they might have different, say, diagnoses, that their shared experiences are such that it is something that they can work together on to make the world a better place. And that is what any movement is about, right? And so part of that is, of course, raising awareness. And the other thing is this idea that, or this fact that a lot of people like my age or in their 30s are getting diagnosed with, say, autism, like I was, because I went undiagnosed back in the day, right? And so, I mean, autism is a pretty difficult thing to live with without any support for so many years. I mean, the book's in progress, okay? And so, but the fact is it's really was really eye-opening to get this diagnosis. And for many women, we get this diagnosis after our kids are diagnosed. So our kids are diagnosed, and then we're like, well, they don't seem strange to me. And so I'm like, oh, and then we look in the mirror and we go in, and that's what happens. Okay. So, and so there's this, more awareness among adults of what they might, and along with that greater awareness and the neurodiversity movement, there is less stigma, okay, about being neurodivergent, which is less shame. Okay. So in my books, I define neurodiversity as normal variations in human neurological function, and the emphasis is on normal. These variations are normal, right? Here's normal. I'm drawing a circle with my fingers, and inside we have a variety of variations in humans, right? Some of us are very tall. Some of us, like me, I'm actually 5'11" and can't ride ponies, but some of us, are not and get to ride ponies, and I'm jealous. And so this is a difference, right? That's within, the normal variations of being a human. And so that's what neurodiversity means, normal variations. So, and to help people understand, I break it into three types. This is very, we'll say rigid. There's a lot of overlap here. Okay. A lot of overlap. So there's three different categories, we'll say, of neurodivergences. And we have developmental neurodivergences, and this is what most people think of. Okay. ADHD, autism, dyslexia, things like that. Okay. And then there are what we call mental illnesses. Okay. Or psychiatric neurodivergences, bipolar disorder, anxiety disorders, things like that. Okay. And then acquired neurodivergences, PTSD, post-concussion syndrome. Who's ever gotten a concussion from riding a horse? I have. And so things like that. And so we have, basically ones you're born with, ones you acquire. And then with mental illnesses, sometimes it's a little fuzzy. Whatever, it's fine. It doesn't really matter, actually. This is the beautiful umbrella of neurodiversity.
Got it. That's a really, really helpful explanation. Thank you, Katie. I think breaking it down into those different categories creates a lot of clarity. So I really appreciate that. What would you say are some common misconceptions about neurodivergence? And maybe then after we talk about that, we can talk about also how it relates to the equestrian community.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we think about, part of it is we think about autistic people as not being social or having empathy. That's a common misconception. Now, that doesn't mean I'm actually social environments make me nervous. Okay, for example, but once I feel comfortable in a social environment, then I am less nervous. Does that make sense? Or what it means to be social to me is a small group of friends, not a huge party where I get stressed out by people bumping into me and things like that. Okay, we have this idea that anxiety means something. Literally something just happened to me today where I had to have surgery on my eye, and the surgeon was like, well, you're just so anxious about this. And I'm like, am I? Or are you seeing anxiety on my electronic medical record? Because I literally actually turned to my husband and said, do I seem anxious to you? And my husband, bless his heart, said, you seem appropriately concerned, because I was sick and couldn't see out of the eye. And so, and then we fixed the problem, and that's that. But there's this idea that, like I said, I mean, I know what's at the very top of my EMR, and it says anxiety disorder. And so every doctor is going to see that first. Some of them are jerks about it. Some of them aren't. And so, so that can be frustrating. And so you don't want to tell people. That's what, when I say stigma, this is what I'm talking about. You don't want to tell people about your diagnosis. And that means also, though, that your needs aren't met. Okay. I do have anxiety. I should be able to feel anxiety about my eye having trouble. I want to be able to get back on my horse again. Right. And so but like, he's shaming me for that. That's not okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It's assigning, like, it's correlating two things that actually aren't related in that moment, in a really unfair way, especially as a patient. I think that makes perfect sense. That would be a super frustrating experience and something that people with that diagnosis probably face a lot of. So
Right.
I can totally understand that. Um, as we talk about neurodiversity and as it relates to being a rider and having a horse, how, in your experience, kind of how has that impacted your relationship with horses? And just tell us a bit about your story as it relates to riding.
Well, I always felt better around the horses. So summer camp as a kid, I convinced the person who was in charge of the barn to let me ride every day. You actually weren't supposed to ride every day. You're supposed to alternate your like camp activities. Like I was supposed to be doing archery or something. And I'm like, I don't want to do any of those things. All I want to do is be at the barn. I'm like, I'll muck stalls. I'll do whatever. Fill hay bags, right? Here I am, 12, 13, 14 years old. I said, just don't make me go back. I just want to be here. And so she did. She let me ride every single day all summer long. It was great. So, because it was soothing. And there is something about walking into a barn and smelling, I don't know what that smell is, all the smells, right? There's the hay, there's the poop, honestly, and the sweat and everything. And it just is like my entire body just, and I think I am not the only person on the planet that feels this way. I'm like, here we are. Ugh. And, yes, I can't ride right now. I haven't been able to ride because of this, like I said, my eye thing. Just, it's been a couple weeks, that's all. Or like when one of my horses is injured or something. But like, putting them in the cross ties and grooming. And then like one of my favorite things to do is just sort of lie on them. I'll tell you, the geldings put up with that better than the mares, but my mare puts up with it. So just that sort of relaxing your body and feeling that enormous heartbeat and those deep breaths and those slow breaths, and it slows your breathing down and your heart rate. And there is nothing like that. Okay. And people who don't get it are never going to get it. And that's okay. I'm sure they have something else they like. They probably are runners. Okay. But the people who know what I mean, which are your listeners, they know what I mean, that you can come to the barn. And this is the thing, right? We always say, don't ride if you're having a bad day because you're going to make it worse, right? But for me, and I think for a lot of people, you're having a bad day, you come to ride and that bad day goes away. And so, it's psychiatric medication on 4 hooves. I mean, it's wonderful. And so when you're on a horse, there's nothing else you can think about except being on the horse. Unless something intrudes in a bad way, in which case we have other problems. But those intrusions, like if I'm like hacking or something, those typically don't intrude, right? It's usually somebody else that's creating the problem. Anyway, I actually don't remember your question. It fell out of my head. I was too busy.
That was exactly my question. It was just kind of how has a neurodivergence kind of impacted your relationship with horses, which I think you answered to a T. So perfect. And I think that all of us can relate to that feeling. And I think, what I'm hearing from you, which correct me if I'm wrong, is just like there are a lot of noises or external elements that are happening in a situation with somebody with neurodiversity, where when you go to the barn or when you're with your horse, a lot of that noise goes away.
The noise goes away. That's right. The noise goes away, and it's wonderful. There is a reason why so many horse girls are actually autistic, and this is a study. I cite it in my book that's coming out in November. It says, so that now that they are diagnosing children, it's a book about parenting neurodivergent kids. And so like yes, these are stereotypes. Okay. But, stereotypes, what's the kernel of truth here? Right.
Yeah.
And so, Legos, trains, right. My kids. So I have two boys. Right. And these are things that they just adored. Girls, cats, and horses. And it's hilarious. So, and it's like they said, horses was the number one thing that they found. And these are what they call them in children are intense interests or special interests. And these are things where let's just call it, I was obsessed, right? We were
Yeah.
obsessed with them, right? And so, in autistic girls, but we don't see it in autistic girls as much because they're more socially acceptable. Whereas, girls also tend to be punished if they act out or act weird. So we end up not learning to hide that. And that's called masking in neurodiversity speak. We mask our differences. And we learn that very young, like age nothing. Like quit acting, quit crying, quit being upset. Why are you upset about this? And like, whereas a boy is allowed to have more emotional, like throw a temper tantrum because he doesn't get his Legos. Yeah. So horse girls and autism, absolutely proven to be a connection. So I'm not making that up.
Wow.
Yeah. I loved that when I found it. I was so happy.
I believe it. And honestly, I mean, horses are such a source of calm for so many people that I'm happy that so many people who are neurodivergent have found horses, because it's like, it's the best medication.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really interesting stat.
Yeah.
What role does mindfulness or sensory awareness play in your experience as a rider?
I am not a mindfulness person. This is interesting. I just joined a writing group this last fall to help me finish a book manuscript. I'm writing a book. It's called An Autistic Girl's Guide to Horses. It's a memoir. We can talk about that later if you'd like. And this mindfulness writing group, they're like making me meditate, and then we write, and then we talk, and it's hilarious. And I'm like very bad at this. I'm bad at yoga. I'm bad at meditation. And this are all things I'm terrible at. This is why I ride horses, is because I get on a horse and then I breathe, and then do all the things. So, so for me, the struggle is, I'm gonna sort of make a left turn here, okay? And say that the struggle is the challenge being a neurodivergent rider, okay? And this has to do with all three of those categories I spoke about above, okay? Is something called executive functioning, and I don't know if you've heard this phrase before, but I'm gonna just go with it, okay? EF for short, is the part of your brain that's basically controls the rest, right? It's your CEO, okay? And so it helps you concentrate. It helps you focus, same thing really, memorize things, commit things to your deeper memory as opposed to just your what we call working memory. That's why some people have a really hard time remembering, say, names, things like that, which will come up really, it's a big deal in a second. Working memory is a really big deal for equestrians. So let's just talk about those, right? And so left and right, for example, I have to like think first. I have to process this, and this is something called processing speed. And so it doesn't matter what your IQ is, okay, or how many words you know, or your vocabulary, how smart you are. Slow processing speed is actually completely unrelated to that. Okay, I can tell you every saddle maker in the world that I love. I can memorize anything. I hear a song one time, I know the lyrics. I mean, that my brain is in some ways like that, like a suction cup, but in other ways, working memory, it has to go in. Okay, it can't just sit in my inbox. It has to be put in the filing cabinet, or it falls right out. And I have to make a deliberate choice and sit down and go, okay, and just do that. And then say processing speed, left and right is something that if you struggle with left and right, then you are struggling with processing. Okay. And so now imagine that you're doing a jump course. Okay. I don't know. What do you ride?
I rode eventing.
Oh, okay, great. So combined training, right? And I schooled across country. So you would love the Carolina Horse Park. It's lovely. And the cross country course is just so pretty. And the ground is so soft. And I can tell you that because I have fallen on it. And it's absolutely delightful to fall on. You hop right up again. You're like, this is great. And you get back on your horse and keep going. Okay. So, right. So I schooled the cross country. I don't compete in the cross country. But and my son as well, we like to compete things that fall, but then we will do the dressage and the CT, and so the jumpers and the CT. So now imagine a jumper course, or even worse, a jump course, and then immediately jump off. So not one where you come out and then go back in and do the jump off, but one where you make time and then you have to immediately do the jump off. I have gone off course 50% of the time this year. It's terrible. Okay. It's awful. Now, once I was disqualified, only once, but the circling, I'm like, I have got to. And so, and my coach is going crazy because we're like in the running for horse of the year. Okay. We ended up 4th, so we didn't suck, but it was, and she's like, just look at the numbers. And I'm like, okay, I'll look at the numbers. And then the next show, the numbers were like scotch taped on at the top and the wind was blowing and the numbers were flapping around and I can't see the numbers. And I'm going, we got better numbers at our own barn. And this is like, I turned the corner. I said, I don't see a number. I see no numbers. I'm literally yelling this at my trainer. And so I circled. My son was like watching a train wreck. And I'm like, you know what, man? You got disqualified here last time we were here. So shut up. Okay. Because he is also autistic. Right. And so in fact, we have this running joke where if one of us jumps clear, it's like, oh no, because the next you're going to go second, you're going to screw it up. And he's not wrong. So anyway, so yeah, I don't know if there was ever a show where we both jumped clear last season. And so like, it's really hard. So you just walk up. I'm like, I need that jump course. I need that the day before. Now, I don't have this problem with dressage because those tests we can practice and practice and practice at home. I can do that test right now, and I haven't done it since last year. Okay. So, because we just haven't competed in the dressage, but I can do all the tests that we did last year because they're in that deeper filing cabinet, right? Working memory and that deep memory. They're already in the deep memory. They're not going anywhere. Okay. I'll know those on my deathbed. Okay. But every jump course, they have some clipboard by the thing. Somebody walks up, they look at it like this, they go right in and they got it. And that blows my mind. My nightmare is we're jumping a jump course and it is not my horse spooks. It is not my horse refuses. It is not that I lose my stirrups. In fact, I've dreamt that I've lost my stirrups and it was really fun actually to jump. No, it's that I forget. So it's this horrible thing. It's that I'm naked. It's in school dream. But for me, it's I've gone off. The course. I've forgotten it. And so I come around. I land. I come around, and I'm like, and then all the jumps are the same color, or all of this, and it's the same dream. It is horrible. It's a horrible dream. Except it's also my reality. And so, wouldn't it be neat if I don't know, sometime maybe in the lower levels or something, like what is the goal of jumpers, right? Is the goal of jumpers to see who has the best working memory, or is the goal of jumpers to see who is the best jumper? So if my coach could say, butterfly line, roll back to Christmas trees, and say that to me like we do at home, I don't have to worry about, and this is what I mean by outside. You asked me about outside intrusions, right? This is where I don't have to worry about anything. I can trot in and just go. And I've run this by coaches, and the younger ones are like, "Oh yeah, that's really interesting." Yeah, what's the goal, right? What's the goal of a jump course? What is the goal of a cross country course? What are we trying to test, right? And what we're not trying to test is how well the rider's working memory works. That is definitely not anywhere in the USEF rules, okay? And so it's not anywhere in any kind of training. It's not how well, especially if they just stick it up there an hour before you're supposed to walk in the arena, which is what they do at a lot of eventing. If you know this, because that's what it's totally different with jumpers. They'll have the course set up the day before. But I say that to some people, and they're like, no, you need to learn to memorize it. And I'm like, I can learn to memorize it but it doesn't work that way. It's never gonna change. There's no pill I can take that's gonna fix this problem. My favorite example of this is inside leg to outside rein. Okay. And if you're listening to this podcast and no one has yelled that at you in your life, then I don't know what you do on your horse. But that has been yelled at me. And you know what? That makes a whole lot of sense to me. Inside leg to outside rein. I got that. You know what I don't got? Right leg to left rein. I can't even say it. I can't even think it. Okay. And I'm like, I don't know which way that is. You're counterbent. I'm like, just say inside to outside. I mean, like, that's what we say anyway. And a lot of trainers are like, yeah. And what they'll say is that the inside to outside thing is actually hard for some lower level riders, because the idea of bending is hard. And so they're used to saying left and right. And I'm like, well, I'm not a lower level rider, so please say inside and outside. And with my son as well, it makes so much more sense to us, but other trainers, they're like, if you don't know left and right, then you need to learn left and right, which, how can you be your age and not know left and right? And I'm like, oh dear, we're going to have a talk. Okay. But just not right now because I'm riding. So like, these are the sorts of things that intrude where someone is causing me to doubt myself or feel bad about myself. And I don't want that. I want to love what I'm doing.
Yeah. It feels like you have really mastered the things that will create success for you in your as a rider. And that is so cool to be armed with kind of that toolkit of like, here's what I need. And and the outcome is going to be positive. For people who don't necessarily have that toolkit yet, because they're still figuring out exactly what they need. What do you recommend as far as like figuring out I need to be told inside leg versus versus left leg. How do you kind of go about that process?
I know,
and then
right?
How do you communicate it clearly?
So one of the things is finding a trainer who's not a jerk, and who will listen to you. We've had, I don't know, I think this is kind of going on everywhere, but we've had lots of barns close and people move and people relocate. And so we're at a barn now back with a trainer that we adore, and who is willing to, make riding more accessible for us. When I say us, I mean me and my son. But I do not think that what I'm asking for is now the me wanting USEF to make accommodations for people with neurodivergent disabilities that's a whole other issue. We're going to worry about that later. But as far as like at your barn, say with your trainer, right? It is I would imagine that if you are here listening to this, and this is something you were like, oh, I want to listen to that one, then it is possible that you have that you struggle with anxiety. Okay, because if you have autism, then you struggle with anxiety. Period. You can't grow up in our society. It's called comorbidity, like the way the Venn diagram overlaps there, it's almost completely. Okay, if you have ADHD, the same. Okay, and then some people have anxiety because they were born with anxiety and they have an anxiety disorder of some type, and they struggle with that, and they go to the barn to get away from it. Like I said, this is we want to leave that. We want to like flop on our horses and let them give us all of their vibes and this sort of thing. So if you have a trainer that's making that worse, you have to stop with that trainer. Okay, you either need to tell them or you need to leave. Okay, if the barn is making it worse, and now look, we don't all have a lot of choices here. Like I said, we keep getting bounced around because the barns keep, I mean, it literally is like a thing that is in a crisis in our area right now. That's why I said, why don't we just move down to the horse park and get our own place in Carthage? I was like, just so aggravated with trying to find a barn. So part of it is articulating what you need without feeling ashamed. And prior to that is figuring out what you need. So being able to say, I'm scared. Okay, this jump is scary to me. I'm intimidated by this jump. My horse stopped at this jump last time, so now I'm scared this time. Can you help me with that? And it's okay to be scared. Great riders recognize that fear so that they don't give it to their horse. Okay, this is but we all act like, I think, especially in certain disciplines, that we're never afraid. Like, oh, they'll get on any horse. Like, that's a great thing. And I'm like, I don't know if that's such a good thing. I'm not sure if we should be, proud of being willing to get on any horse. I mean, that sounds a little dangerous, actually, and maybe not healthy for the horse or the rider. So then, if you have a horse, let's say, sometimes your trainer will help you try to horse shop, and you don't feel safe on that horse. And you are like, they're trying to talk you into it. And you're like, I don't feel safe on this horse. And you might feel ashamed to say that. So it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be afraid of a jump that's too high or weird or new or strange. I'm like, this is my first, brush jump. I mean, they're scary, right? The first time, and you're like, oh God, what's my horse going to do? I have no idea. And so the first time you canter through water, gallop through water, I mean, it can be a little scary, right? And then you get wet, and then you get up, and maybe you start over again. And so, but it's okay to be afraid. But more importantly, it's okay to tell your trainer that you're afraid. And if they do not respect you saying that, then you need to either call them out or leave barns. Okay. You need to say, I'll give you some words. I'm expressing this fear so that I can be a better rider. I am going to communicate my fear to my horse, and my horse is going to react to that. I want to be a better rider for my horse. Can you help me understand? Okay. And so, and sometimes that's enough to sort of shake them out of this like thing where we think there's all these preconceptions about, what it means to be brave. And so, and then they start listening, and that's all you need. I cannot have left and right. That means nothing to me. I need inside and outside. And because inside and outside is something we already do, you are not asking too much. Okay, that is fine. Now memorizing the dressage cones, print them out, take them home. Okay, if there's a show coming up, say, I'm going to need extra time to memorize my dressage test. And also, I'm going to need you to coach me through it a couple times to make sure that I have it nailed down, because for me, memorizing a dressage test takes more time. Asking for this stuff, and so you pay for an extra lesson. What's the big deal? It should be no big deal. But making yourself vulnerable in that way, especially if you're not frankly as old as me, is can be hard. I mean, if you're 25 or 30 and you might be a hotshot rider, but there's things we are all afraid of. I had a horse who was absolutely great, except she spooked occasionally. And her spook would toss me, I swear, 30 feet in the air. Okay. She broke my tailbone. She did this. I mean, it was horrible. And I had to get rid of this horse. I could not keep this horse. I sent her back, to the breeder. I'm like, I can't sit this spook. I'm pretty good at sitting spooks, but this spook got me off. If it gets your trainer off, right? I'm like, well, you get on her. You see what, so the first step is figuring out, you might not even know yet where you're suffering, okay? And you need to sit down and maybe write about it in a notebook. Do you keep notes from your lessons? Some people do that. You have a journal, like a lesson journal. If you, or maybe just to have a conversation about it with another equestrian friend and say, these are the things that I really struggle with. Do you? No. Okay. Well, do you have any ideas for me? I mean, I feel so alone in these struggles, which is another problem, right? Feeling alone. You're not alone. And then, coming up with practical ideas, and if you involve your coach in coming up with these fixes, right? Then they can be fantastic. Your coaches probably have ideas that we never thought of, right? They've been doing it for a while.
Yeah, totally. So I think what I'm learning from you is just the importance of not only advocating for yourself, but communicating exactly what it is that you need in that moment, and finding a coach who is receptive to that. Because if they're not, it's not the right fit. It's not, it's pretty binary as far as if they're not willing to make these adjustments, then sometimes the best thing for everybody is just to move on to somebody who is willing to kind of work with you on that.
Yeah.
For people who are neurodivergent and struggle to process emotions or communicate clearly in kind of high intensity moments, do you have any advice for handling that or helping others better understand how your brain works?
I have a question. Is that a comment from a listener? Or
Yeah.
Okay, because this is a really great comment. Okay, we have a word for that in my house because my kids struggled with it when they were little, and we had and they still have actually a wonderful therapist. She's the best. Highly recommend any parent of young children get their kids a therapist right now. Okay, and never let them go. And so one of my kids especially would shut down. Okay. Instead of melting down, he would shut down. And this is the kid who rides. And so when he's overwhelmed, he literally, especially when he's younger, could not talk. Okay. He could not talk. And eventually he'd start crying or whatever. And and this was up until age 12 or 13. I mean, he was at shows doing stuff, real stuff, and still couldn't under high stress situations in a lesson. Now coaches were different, things like that, couldn't articulate at all. Okay. Because he was in the green zone. Okay. And green, the yellow was happy and all those feelings. And then blue was sad and all those feelings. Red is anger and all those feelings. And so green is something we didn't have words for in our house. And that's anxious and afraid and things like that. Okay. Green zone. So we still call it the green zone. And I will say, I'm in the green zone to my kids and they will know what it means. And sometimes you're blue-green, right? You can be blue-green. And sometimes you're red-green, right? You're both angry and frustrated and afraid. Let's say your horse is injured and because some ding dong put their boots on backwards before turning them out. Oh my God. Okay. Like that is not a thing that I'm like ready to deal with, but now I'm also terrified for my horse's tendons. Okay. So this is so important. Okay. Is that if you are unable to, like, if you have a moment, this is a processing thing, right? You've been given, let's say, let's take this sort of like emotional trauma out of it for a second and say, your coach is like, okay, I'm switching up the course in practice and it's this. And then you say nothing because what you're doing is you're like, okay, now I have to memorize a whole new stupid course and just give me I need a second. So this is me, right? I say nothing. And they're like, are you with me? And I'm going, yes, I need a moment to process what you have said, but it can be anything. I need a moment to process what you have said. And saying those words, I need a moment to process what you have said but see, that's the thing. Once it becomes more emotional, even saying those words can be impossible. So what I did for my kid, okay, is I helped him. I gave him a script like that. I need a moment. Okay. And I need a moment. You just walk away on your horse and you take your moment. I don't, this group lessons, private lessons, take your moment. You are allowed and you should take a moment. It is your time. You are paying for it. Okay. And you cannot learn if your brain is firing on anxiety. There is no learning anything. Okay. There's no understanding that's happening, and your horse feels every bit of it. Okay. And so any instructor worth their salt will understand, I need a moment. So you just have to figure out how to get those words out, or just one moment, or even raise your hand and say, but that means also you will have to have this conversation at a different time. And this is the hard part, because you have to be vulnerable to your coach. And that can be scary. Okay. You have to say, sometimes when I'm overloaded, okay, I shut down. And when that happens, I am literally unable to speak and I need a moment. And so I'm going to either say, if I can, I need a moment, or I'm just going to hold my hand up and go over to the shady spot of the arena and just take some breaths. And when I am done, I will come back when I'm ready to resume. But they have to let you do that. It's abusive to not let you do that. It is literally abusive to you as a rider to not let you do that. And you do not have to stand for that at all. I understand that making yourself vulnerable in that way can be very scary. Okay. And again, it's a great trainer test, really good trainer test. And again, when my kid was really young, I would go in and I would tell the coach, I would say, he needs a moment. Okay. But I mean, that's, the mom. I was very I was not hands-on. Like I was not the horse mom at all. I was too busy riding my horse, honestly. But if I saw this happening, and this was our very first trainer, and she would kind of berate him, and she's like, well, tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what you're thinking. Okay. Just saying those words out loud is already making my heart race too much. Okay. I'm like, oh my God, because that's how I was spoken to by teachers when I was a kid. And this is our hobby, right? It's our hobby. It might be your profession also, which I hope it is. That's freaking fantastic. It's like, I'm like, well, I'm going to go semi-pro because I do buy horses and train them and then sometimes sell them. Although right now I have too many, but anyway, you do have to make yourself vulnerable, and that's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that, neurodivergence or not, that's an important conversation to have with your coach, of moments that you're going to need and ways that you appreciate communication, ways that you plan to communicate with them. So I think that is a really good advice to provide for riders. So, Katie, we are almost here on the hour, and I
Mhm.
can't, it's just absolutely flown by, but I want to make sure to give you, before I kind of dive into our last question, I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of open the floor to you. If there's anything related to this topic of neurodiversity and equestrian sports that I
Mhm.
haven't asked you or prompted you on, that you want to make sure to cover this evening. I know there's probably hours more we could talk about this topic, so we're not going to get to it all. But if there was anything else in these last few minutes that you wanted to talk about, now would be a great time for that.
Well, there is NeuroEC, which is the show team and advocacy team that it is dedicated to the inclusion of neurodivergent riders into equestrian sports. Okay. And so we go to shows, we support each other. Like someone will act as a groom. Having a groom who is also neurodivergent and gets it, oh my gosh. Okay. So I'll bring a groom in addition to, say, our trainer, and for me and my son, who's like, you know, breathe, breathe. Let's all breathe. Let's all hold hands and breathe. And this is so helpful. And so not everybody can afford to do that, but often it's somebody who wants to ride my horses, like a young person who wants to ride my horses, so it works out. But anyway, so if you just want to read about it, it's on my website, which is Katie Rose Guest Pryal, my full name.com/neuroec. So NEURO. I can't spell it in my head. EQ. Okay. Can you put links in the notes to the show notes? Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and what we want and what you want to find is a neurodiversity affirming, okay, it's a phrase, approach to training and showing and these sorts of things. And what NeuroEC wants to do is help people understand that. Okay. It shouldn't be every neurodivergent person's job to, fix this. And so leadership in this area is something I'm working towards. We also have an Instagram. It's probably much more easy to find there. I have been weak on posting, and my social media queen is busy with something else at the moment. So we are not doing much on our Instagram, but check us out. It's just NeuroEC on Insta. And so that is, I think, great. It's not therapeutic riding. I think therapeutic riding is incredible. It's not that. Okay. So people, when they hear it, they think that's what I'm talking about. So this is people who are, equestrian competitors, like we are discussing today. Okay. And therapeutic riding is something else. However, like I said, therapeutic riding is awesome. Another thing, for example, that I get to participate in this weekend, for example, is equestrians coaching using horses. So this is like team coaching or life coaching, people who are not riders, not equestrians, but the coaches use, like the life coaches or team coaches use horses. So think about therapeutic riding, but not in that way. This is horses being used to help with teams understanding each other and how they work and things like that. So one of them is the EGC method, and it stands for equine gestalt coaching. And I can give you some links for that. So like this weekend, I'm trailering my two horses. My son and I are trailering our two mares to a EGC. I always try to say that backwards. An EGC coach who is hosting a clinician in this higher level person who's going to come in. And so we get to, our horses are going to be part of the coaching tools, right? And then we also get to participate, which makes that really fun. And so I'm always trying to learn new things about how horses can help people, just live better lives.
That's amazing. I love that. I have just the more opportunities people outside of the horse world have
Mhm.
to learn from horses and interact with them, I think just the better we will all be. So that's
Yes.
really cool, and definitely for our listeners, I highly recommend checking out NeuroEck. That sounds like an awesome group to be a part of. Katie, for people who want to learn more about you, I mean, you gave your website. Is there anywhere else that they should go, or where can they find your books? Tell me more about
Um,
that.
Thank you. You can, there's a shortcut. My website is just katiepryal.com, first name, last name.com. And then it redirects. And so to the longer one, with all the four names. That's how you know it's serious. It's all four names.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm on Instagram, Katie Rose Pryal. I'm on. That's probably the place I post the most. But I also have a Substack where I write about. It's about writing and writing. Okay, that's so there's always some sort of writing metaphor, but it's about being neurodivergent and an author and an equestrian. It just and then and so my Substack is katiepryal.substack.com. And I don't know if you guys know what Substack is, but if you do, you can follow me there. Those are the main platforms where I'm at. And my books are all on my website, but also at pryalbooks.com. So there's a shortcut to a web page where they're all for sale through whatever platform you'd like to buy books on. And I have novels that feature, and they're all like love stories that feature neurodivergent characters. And then I have a host of nonfiction books that are about neurodiversity.
Amazing. You must be so busy. That's a lot of
It's
stuff that you have
it's
going.
what we love, though. We do what we love. It's great.
Yeah.
You do what you love, right?
It's true. It is. Yeah, it's not work when you're doing what you love.
That's right.
Uh Amazing. Well, Katie, I really appreciate you taking this time sharing your expertise on such an important topic. I am confident that we're going to get a lot of follow-up questions here and have reason to do this again and dig deeper into some of these concepts. And I really appreciate you and that you're sharing about such an important topic to the broader community.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I would be delighted to come back.
Wonderful. Well, everybody who submitted questions, thank you for doing so and have a wonderful evening. Bye, guys.